City, and I have a very special guest with me today. This is my husband, Simon
Hello.
Powis. Hi,
Hello,
Simon.
my name is Simon. Did you ever see that skit?
No.
It was a Mike Myers skit on SNL.
Oh.
See, yeah,
We'll look it up.
yeah, that's who I am. It's an easier way to remember my name.
Well, it's always nice to give the YouTube and the Facebook a little bit of time to catch the stream, if that's a thing. And if anybody's out there tuning in, it'd be awesome if you said hello in the chats. We will keep reading and keep looking to see who's out there. But I asked Simon this week if he wouldn't mind coming in and talking with me about how to practice. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I'm very confident and proud to say that Simon is a great teacher, and he teaches classical guitar. And as we all probably can imagine, a classical musician has to have a lot of discipline with practice and building up towards their skills. So I thought we could learn a lot from Simon and how he helps his students practice.
Thanks, Evita.
Yeah. Also, hi Ella, hi Spiller, hi
So
Brent.
we
Alice.
might have some classical guitar corner people in here.
That's great.
Many of you may know, may not know that I'm sort of the third silent partner in Syncopated City. I collaborated with Michael and Evita over the last 5 years building out this online school. And I'm excited to share this discussion about practice because it really informed how we went about creating the curriculum inside Syncopated City, this Lindy Hop roadmap. It was largely informed by my understanding of learning and there's a progression of learning that is structured and step by step and offers guidance. So it might be of interest to the classical guitarists who are eavesdropping in here, which I welcome them to come along. And of course, practice as a skill is absolutely transferable to other crafts.
That's what I thought. And I thought, Lindy Hoppers are not usually considered the most disciplined, people. I mean, maybe some are, but in general, I think swing dancers and Lindy Hoppers, we kind of live in the social dance world. So it's, sort of, I'll go practice when I go out dancing. But wow, we're stuck in a place right now where without being able to go out dancing, we really can and should hone in on how we can practice at home right now.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, I think practice is actually the most important skill to develop because it allows you to progress further. It allows you to improve. It gives you the skill sets to take on the information, which is these days so readily available, and do something with it. But
that's a great point, Simon, that there's so much information out there for us to eat, but do we actually digest it?
Well, these days we run into a different problem than it used to be, because back in the old days...
What's considered the old
days?
The
old days was when I was back in Sydney and I worked at a music store and I was in the sheet music department. Or even before that, around that time, and I was so excited when I came across music that would come in paper,
right,
physical,
tangible paper,
and because I couldn't get access to that music otherwise, and so it was really a treasure trove to pour through all of those books and things in that music store. But now, of course, we just have via PDF everything we could ever want, which is wonderful, but it's also an impediment because we have to make a lot of decisions along the way about what to work on. Is this a good for my development?
Can I say that the equivalent to Lindy Hoppers is in the olden days before there was YouTube and so many clips readily available to us. We didn't have moves, step, routine choreography ideas. When I first started dancing, there was just a few people that had some VHS cassettes. And even at that, the quality wasn't very good or it wasn't easily shared. So that's the equivalent to Lindy Hoppers, is that our digital video library and like the onslaught of information of, try this, this is cool, is more than we can handle. We have so many people saying hello.
Well, there's Wesley.
Hi,
Wesley
Wesley.
is the treasured community manager at Syncopated City. Hi, Wesley.
We have Jackie from Saf Shoes. Hi, Jackie.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and we have Ron. I saw you in office hours this morning.
Yeah. Jackie. Oh, well, Jackie.
And
just
Robert.
say Jackie.
Robert from Germany. Great to see you. And Terry. Hi, guys. Yeah. Terry and Eileen. And Ruth. We are so spoiled. It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. With the technology that lets us, basically have anything we want these days. Yeah, VHS trading. And, there were some people who were super protective of their video. Benny!
There used to be, I've heard stories, it's only anecdotal, so I might be wrong, but there was a flamenco player many years ago who would perform behind a screen so that people wouldn't copy what he was doing.
What?
That's
a great story.
And so these
hilarious.
days, it's sort of everything's out there in the open, and the skill that's more valuable now, in my opinion, or what's a value that we can offer as educators is curation and guidance and feedback and structure. And that's really, Syncopated City has that in spades. And after listening to this conversation, you might better understand why Syncopated City is arranged the way it is. Obviously, Michael and Evita had their own opinions and insights as teachers, but I really was quite adamant about a structured curriculum. And as I understand it with Lindy Hop, it isn't part of the tradition to codify things so much or to line them up in a linear fashion.
Well, one of my favorite stories is Simon attended Beantown. This was a couple of summers ago, and it was one of his first times to be a student at a big Lindy Hop festival. And of course, Simon, he was like, well, can I be in the higher level?
No. That was being facetious, though.
But it's funny because everybody wants to be in the higher level. Anyways, I said, no, Simon.
I think it was pink track.
The pink track. I was like, no, you cannot be in the pink track. You're going to be yellow or I don't know.
Some kind of citrus color.
Whatever color it was, yeah. And one of the things that you told me you were a bit overwhelmed by is, as a student, you had all these classes in a day with all of these fantastic teachers who had fantastic ideas and material, but none of them connected. Mm-hmm. None of them kind of prepped you for the next person who was going to come in. And you kept asking, actually, so which is right? Where do I start?
Right. And that wasn't just Beantown. It was just one of the, I think the first times I sort of was aware that I've been to, Lindy Focus and things in Greece, like all over the place, because I get to hop around with Evita.
Well, we used to.
Yeah, we used to. And so that was one of the things I noted or observed about the Lindy Hop world, is that compared to what I was used to, it wasn't as linear, it wasn't as structured, it wasn't as codified. So that's something that I think is really important. And anyway, we're gonna dive in now that we've had our preamble. Everyone's in there.
Hello, Christina. Hello, Cherin.
Thanks everyone for saying hi. Thank you for being here. All right.
Okay, what do we do?
So I've got one big main section that's divided into 5 parts, but I wanted to preface this with the idea of, has anyone heard of the 10,000 hours of practice?
Yes, that's the thing that that's the idea, the law, the rule, that if you practice something for 10,000 hours, you will become a master or be considered masterful at it. Right.
So this has gone through pop culture, and it was brought into pop culture by Malcolm Gladwell.
I do like Malcolm Gladwell.
And he's a wonderful podcast, wonderful author, excellent storyteller. And people think this concept was created by Malcolm, but it wasn't actually. He took the research of a guy called Anders Ericsson. Anders Ericsson. So this is the book you want to have a look at. Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole there are authors of this book, and we'll put it near our faces.
Anders Ericsson. Cool.
And so they studied violinists in Berlin, and these were not professional violinists, these were high-level students.
Okay.
So there's number one, like as in, myth busted, because they weren't professionals. These were high-level students. So if you're making this sort of study, you would think if you're going to talk about masters, you'd be talking about people, and Sophie Mutter, the top of the top, like what do they do? But these were high-level students, okay, university students. Secondly, the hours that that Malcolm references, this 10,000 hours, was cherry picked.
That's a nice round number.
It's a nice round number, and the 10,000 hours was what they found for the common ground for students. I believe it was around 18. I'm not sure if that's the correct age.
18 years old?
Yeah, but at 16 or what have you, it was 7,000 and a half hours. And by the age of 30, for concert pianists, they were estimating 30,000 plus hours, so,
wow.
Or something like that.
That's a lot.
But you can see that it's a gradient, and it's not a fixed number. But we love this simple concept of, if I just do it for 10,000 hours.
That makes sense, yeah.
Then I'll be a master. However, it's not true. And then the other thing that they go into in depth in this book, which is kind of the core of it, is how you spend that time.
Oh, right. Because you could be, doing your practice for an hour, and actually we all know how only 15 minutes is where you actually do anything, and the rest is walk in, stretch, talk to your friend.
Right. So one of the concepts
or
to
watch
have
videos.
Top of mind for us as classical guitarists, and I think you could take this first word and apply it differently, is playing versus practice. And for us guitarists, we use the word playing as in, playing through music, playing for fun, for enjoyment. I say noodling around with the fingers, playing,
Noodling, that's
going
one of my
through music,
favorites.
watching TV, and just like the physical sensations of just playing. That's playing.
Okay.
The equivalent of that in dance, what would that be?
Oh, being silly or just mucking around. Mucking around, is that a word?
Well,
Goofing around, being we also play, and there's a very important aspect to that, but it's unfocused. We're not really specifically like working on anything in general.
I also wonder if we could, it's not an exact correlation,
right.
but it's the actual social dancing. Because that is not focused practice. You are accruing skills, but more than anything else, you're probably reinforcing what you've got.
Oh, very well said. For example, when you go out social dancing, you're probably not concertedly working on any technical thing. You're out there to enjoy and have the experience. And it is valuable, just like a guitarist would need to play through whatever song they're playing, but that's not going to actually make it stronger or better.
But you are in a sense practicing improvisation and social dance, so it's a mixed bag.
Right.
But anyway,
because there are skills that we practice on the social dance floor that are actually impossible to train alone or to train outside of those circumstances.
So then, what is then play? If we're saying that's play, then what is practice? So practice might be taking a specific move that you've learned. Let's say, so just today we released a video in Syncopated City called Kida Kida.
Kida Kida.
It's a variation for followers, right? So
yes.
That rhythm, those movements repeated over and over again with the intent to use it, then practice it with a partner or get it up to a certain tempo. Right. That's practice.
Gotcha.
The word I like to supplant with practice a lot of time is work. Because practice isn't necessarily fun or enjoyable, but
it's work.
It's productive. It gets you further down the track in terms of your skill sets and your development.
Yeah.
So there's sort of that balancing act is something to keep in mind in terms of what we're doing. It's not just time spent.
Mm-hmm.
Watching videos could be spent productively in a practice way if you're really analyzing and breaking it down, or it could just be entertainment.
Right. That's a really important note nowadays with YouTube. One of my favorite stories is somebody watching home interior design or do-it-yourself decorations, and they kind of splurge and they enjoy watching somebody, let's say, redo their kitchen, but they don't actually redo their kitchen. It's just a dream that they keep wishing, I'd love to do that someday. And so similarly, what you said, just watching really cool dance clips is fun and entertaining, but what are you doing productively in that to get closer to being a better dancer? So
I'm going to ask in the chat, can you tell me, and this goes for musicians, dancers, everyone really, any just choose your skill.
Ooh.
How much of your time in a percentage, 30%, 40%, 100%, do you spend practicing in the way that we just defined it, kind of working?
Oh, I'm so scared.
And
of
you know,
what we're gonna get.
and this isn't about proving anything to anybody. It's really just about thinking about it and coming up with a number. It doesn't have to be exact, obviously, but just coming up with
like
a number
percentage.
that then says, okay, well, maybe there's room to change that if you want to. So I'd be interested in putting that in the chat. I saw that Shannon said definitely spent 10,000 plus in Lindy Hop, and I'm definitely not a master.
But you're very great, Shannon. You're great.
And Sarah asked, "Hi, Sarah. Sarah Pollock.
Hi, Sarah.
Just up in Inwood, a couple of blocks up. Can there be an overlap between playing and practicing? Example: start out playing and then hit a trouble spot and work on that for a bit in isolation. Yes, I think. Yes, absolutely. But we can all sort of be honest with ourselves about, and I think. After I go over the 5 pillars of practice
Oh, I can't
that I've come up with, it will maybe help us discern how we're spending that time.
So Claudia, I know Claudia, she practices very intensely. She says probably about 80%. Claudia comes from a lot of boogie woogie training background and sports training. And so I think, yes, Claudia, you probably really, you know how to train and practice. I believe you. Robert says that actually Tanya, she's a flutist, and so for playing flute, 70% practice time. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not going to confess my percentage.
Well, there is I want to get into the 5 pillars.
Okay.
But I remember James Morrison, a great Australian trumpeter, being asked this question. Musicians often get asked, how many hours do you practice? And I do think once people get to a professional standard, when they're touring and performing a lot, and this goes for jazz musicians very much so, their performance is practice. It's their iteration, it's their repetition. You can get to a stage, and this is the idea of mastery, where you've put in the groundwork that allows you to then play without necessarily having to focus so intently on development. It's about sustaining differently.
This is hilarious what is coming in. Wesley, 70 to 80% of my total dancing time practice. But Wesley, we've talked about this and how he actually has a harder time getting out to social dance. So he is a lot of times alone. Benny, you're hilarious. Music practice, 0. Dance practice hour, 0. You're doing great.
And Rickard said define practice. Well, we kind of did that just before. Maybe I'd have to back up in the stream a little bit. But I'm about to go through these 5 pillars, so maybe that will help the definition as well. Okay, are you ready?
Yes, but a final thing with Benny. Body, mind, and spirit practice, 8 hours a day.
Oh, nice.
I love you, Benny.
That's what that's what I call sleep. Although I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep these days. There's a high percentage of practicing that. It's really great to hear.
That's good. Maybe because we're all locked up right now and have nothing else to do.
I think that would be. This is, there's always silver linings with challenges, and one of the silver linings here might be that, we can actually make inroads into practice because we can't social dance.
Right.
So here we go. 5 pillars of practice.
Okay.
Number 1 is going to be goals, right?
Goals.
And so, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a destination, it's very hard to think about how you're going to spend your time, how you're going to invest your time. And there's also no way to understand if you've gotten to map that out. One of the things that I think is very difficult is we all inevitably hit a dip in our craft, in terms of if we feel a little depressed about it, we're not making improvement, we're not getting anywhere. So I think to help us better manage that kind of mental fluctuation, goals, and we're about to talk about how we can set those goals, they will help us keep on a steady course, albeit a fluctuating one. You've probably seen pictures of those ones with the squiggly lines instead of a straight line.
And I think it's important to say, Simon, that not just for the student or the amateur, but even teachers, professionals, we all go through those dips. We all feel those plateaus, and we all can get down on ourselves or worried about where our level of dance or where our level of skill is.
So a very common acronym for goals, which is really useful, is SMART goals. And I'm sure you've heard of this, but it's good to think about this and then like think about if you ever had set a goal, how does this fit into this sort of little system, if you like. And of course, it's just one of many systems, but it's a nice, easy one to remember. So, SMART, S-M-A-R-T.
Smart.
S is for specific.
Specific.
M is for measurable.
Measurable.
A is for attainable.
Attainable.
R is for relevant.
Relevant.
And T is for time bound.
Time bound.
Yeah.
Whoa, I've actually never heard of this.
Okay, well, let's take a goal. Well, we can come up with a goal to try and tie in all of these.
Mm-hmm.
But something specific might be that you want to work on one variation for your swing out as a follower.
Sure.
Right? That's very specific.
That's a good one, yeah.
If we broaden it out and say, I want to work on my swing out,
It gets a
it's
little vague.
a little fuzzy. And then if you just have it really broad and say, I just want to be a better dancer, what are you going to do with that? There's not much that's so broad, it's almost going to stop you in your tracks because it's hard to actually think about what to do with that. Next one is measurable. Now, this is a nice one because if you can't measure a goal, it's not really a goal. You know, it's sort of, again, if we're going to do our variation for a swing out, for a follower, we might say, okay, by the end of this practice session, I want to understand the rhythm involved, in like for kida kida, or I want to be able to just to go through the motions. By the end of the week, I want to be able to do it at a slow tempo individually and feel confident with it. By the end of next week, I want to do it at a faster tempo.
Right.
And then in 3 weeks, I want to be able to do it with a partner.
So those are measurable things where I can do it fast, I can do it slow, I know what it is, I can do it with a partner. Dancers, we would even throw in, I can do it spontaneously. So it's not like in a choreographed, okay, I'm gonna do it now. Like it can come out of you freely. And then just rewinding for myself real quick, S in terms of being specific. Just super important to define what it is you're going to work on so that you can stay with that.
And the measurable's not so much about what it is, it's being able to say, did I do that or not?
Gotcha.
So at the end of the second week, if you're still at that slower tempo, you'd be like, well, I didn't get that goal, but maybe you get it in 3 weeks. So it's just, you're able to check in along the way.
Right.
I set this goal, and it's okay not to hit the goal.
Yeah.
But having set the goal is a positive thing.
And so it would be very difficult to just to measure or to say, am I a better dancer now?
Exactly.
It's like
With no specificity, you can't measure anything.
Right.
So the next one, and they all start tying in. So we've got specific, measurable, and then attainable.
This is my favorite because I mean, I think everybody gets sort of a little, what is it? Your eyes are bigger than your stomach, you know? So you think, yeah, I'm gonna win first place and or I'm gonna, you know, become the most famous. And it's like, well, let's be attainable. Let's, you know, bite size.
Yeah, so again, we're going to keep building on this example. So this followers variation. If in that second week, the tempo was 300.
Oh, that's very fast.
It's very fast. And it may be possible, but probably not in 2 weeks. That might be something within the realm of a year or like many years, depending.
I gotcha.
And so if you put that as your second week goal, it's a goal, it's specific, it's measurable, but it's not attainable. So that's really going to be a negative impact. You want to make something that's achievable, even with sort of, there's obviously going to be a sweet spot, which it pushes you a little bit. And we'll talk about the zone of proximal development a little bit later.
Ooh,
but it pushes you a little bit, but it's also within reach. And so that's using your common sense and your own sense of judgment there. So specific, measurable, attainable. Relevant. Relevant is talking about goals that it makes sense for you to be working on these goals. So you might have something coming up, right? A choreographed performance in a group. And the what might be relevant there is working on particular moves in that choreography. Or it might be you're working with your partner on something. So staying relevant in what you're working on. Also, it fits in with your context of what you're working on in general.
I would imagine it also inspires you to practice because if it's relevant, if it makes sense to you, if it pertains to really what you want or hope for, then you have that desire to do it. I mean, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're practicing something because you're being forced to or somebody else is pushing you to do it. Real quickly, we'll come back to the comments for certain at the end, but I did see that Ricard posted about how oftentimes he doesn't have a goal because he's really 100% a social dancer. And even then, it would be interesting to see how you could come up with what sort of goals would help you in your social dancing. They don't have to be performative or BPMs or very technical, but they could actually be more character-driven or socially driven goals.
So let's finish off this little acronym here. So we've had specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and the last one is time-bound. And I sort of mentioned this before with measurable, and I used the example of weeks. If you don't have a time limit, again, it's kind of like being measurable. Then there's just this amorphous calendar span that it could be done in a year, it could be done in a week, it could be done in 2 days, but you need to set that in order to be a successful goal, a goal that actually helps you.
So something that this is kind of outside the example, but it's silly and usable, that if you have a fitness instructor, a simple temporal goal would be, you want to have your body in good shape, ready for the swimsuit by summertime. And that's a very clear time. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, but if someone said that to me and it was, so we're in the North America here, and someone said they're looking to have an exercise goal of, what would you say, the summer body?
Yeah.
That's like, they said that in January.
Fit into your swimsuit.
That's a long-term goal there, and I'd want to know what's in between. I'd need to know incremental steps, because that's kind of one of those, it's a goal, but it's kind of a big one. Is it attainable? Maybe saying I want to lose a pound in 2 weeks or a month or something, and I'm going to do it in these ways and mapping it out.
Gotcha. Again, going back to specificity, but then also making the time a little bit more bite-sized and manageable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's being attainable and measurable. Specific. So it's just a great acronym, just to be, when you're setting goals for yourself, be they short-term, medium-term, or long-term, and I think all of those actually are great. You can start with the long-term, the summer body, and then work backwards and say, what does that mean that I do today?
Right. Or I want to be in the highest level at this event, or I want to come in the top 3 places in a competition, or...
Well, again, those are all very big goals. So
correct, but then you chisel away at what do I need to do today, or in smaller increments to get to the bigger goal.
You got 30 minutes. How does these 30 minutes contribute to that larger goal?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number 1. That's pillar number 1 is the
smart
goals. No, just goals. So the SMART goals is a way to structure your goals, to decide upon your goals. So the next one is, and we'll get to questions in between the different pillars.
Okay, gotcha.
So the next one is structure, and this is where I mentioned this zone of proximal development. So one of the great virtues of Syncopated City is that the roadmap has done this for you. You've had master teachers, Michael and Evita, go through and think about all of the things they know and what they teach in Lindy Hop and organize them in order and incrementally in difficulty, building upon foundations. In my opinion, that's hugely powerful, hugely useful, and quite unique in the Lindy Hop world. I think there are other examples, but I think it's what you guys have created is pretty unique and very special.
Thank you, Simon.
It's the idea of the right material at the right time.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about zone of proximal development, it's really let's say someone's at the ability, they can do a swing out. I'm not so experienced with the dance that I can think of really tiny increments in terms of well, let me ask you. Someone can confidently do a swing out with a partner.
Yep.
They can do certain moves, circle to close. They can, what would be structurally next? Well, maybe it's a bit too broad an example. Maybe you can come up with a better example.
Well, I know what you mean. I mean, this is a question that often is asked of me and Michael from other teachers. Like, where would you start somebody? What is the most important thing? And the dance, I will admit that it oftentimes kind of has sort of a spherical approach, because you can approach it from the music and then grooving and connecting with the music, but you can also approach it from a super technical, like here's the counts and here's where your feet go, and then you can approach it from connection and physical sensation. And so I think it's really important that the multiple layers of the dance are introduced equally, and then you kind of give like the first layer and then the second layer and the third layer, and it would be inappropriate to teach somebody double turns or things at faster tempos if they don't yet know how to correctly turn or do the rhythm.
That's exactly it. And the move that I know, it's called Texas Tommy, is obviously sort of, I know it in a misplay. I don't have all of the things that should come before that.
That is true. Simon, when we first started dating, Simon was like, teach me the most fancy move. And I was like, no, you're not ready for that.
So I think musicians do that a lot. I think everyone who loves what they do does this. They leap for things that they're attracted to. But if you really want to develop and have a strong foundation and be able to be confident with those moves, you need to have this structure underneath in terms of your learning progress to confidently be at that point, as opposed to just barely hanging on and not having those fundamentals support those more advanced moves.
Absolutely. For the dancers watching, you would not teach somebody a Texas Tommy if they couldn't do a swing out. And you would also not introduce that move if the follower wasn't comfortable turning. And you certainly would not introduce that move if frame and connection wasn't something already in their vocabulary that they understood well, in addition to understanding their own body and anatomy, because that particular move can be tricky and dangerous and painful on the shoulder if it's not done well.
And coming back to something you said earlier, that is one of the things I noticed at these dance festivals, weekends, is that you hop around to different classes with different teachers, and although sometimes they have tracks, the levels definitely jump around. There's not as much structure as you could have. Things do jump around. There's not as connected all the time. I'm sure there are exceptions to that. That structure on a larger scale, you can also have structure on just your practice session. Like stretching, warming up, practicing fundamentals. I mean, working on triple step just with a metronome or working with a recording, and then doing some moves, reinforcing moves you already know, and then working on something new. And you can see how with all those ingredients, you could build up a practice session. As a classical guitarist, I work a lot building practice routines that are actually incremental. So that's something I sort of had taken off the plate for people who want to learn and created for them. And often we have to create our own. So,
well, on that note about routines, so for Lindy Hoppers, often, we're always putting so much emphasis on the improvisation and social dancing aspect, because that's what we're aiming for, to have fun with our friends. But we shouldn't forget how wonderful and helpful little routines or combos or choreography is. Because especially if you're a young to intermediate level dancer, practicing the sequence of a little routine, even set to music, without banging your head over, like this is musicality, you absorb these ideas like, oh, the stop happens in the break of the music, and nobody had to kind of say like, this is how to do it. It's just an inherent experience thing. So I just want to say that little mini routines of choreography, whether they're partnered stuff or solo stuff, is incredibly important to having as your ingredient for practice. Otherwise, you're never understanding flow and transitions. You're just kind of always in the moment, hoping that your improvisation is going to work.
And that's a really nice tie into the next one, actually.
Oh, what's the next one?
We had goals and we had structure, and I'm going to talk about repetition.
Yeah.
Now, this is something that musicians will be nodding their head to be like, yes, repetition, we know. But I honestly don't know how much dancers do it in comparison. I know that you have told me, Evita, as a young dancer, very young dancer, you had in the Ballet Folklorico, that you would do these things like walking to the drum
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
And your rhythm is amazing.
It's
and I'm
all
sure
right.
it has to
It's
do
all
with
right.
that early repetition. What I want to say about repetition is that the body knows what it repeats, but the body does not know if you're doing it correctly or not. So it's very, very important to be mindful when you do these repetitions. First of all, to have the correct guidance about what you're about to repeat. And second of all, to be mindful and present when you are doing the repetitions. Because the old adage is practice makes perfect, but it's not true, because practice you could be going way off track and then you're just reinforcing negative things. So really what practice does is it makes permanent.
Yes.
It's
Practice makes permanent.
it's
It grooves that muscle memory further into your body. So yeah, you want to make sure that what you're doing is healthy on the body and is good.
One of the cool little things I've read about, I've seen it in a TED Talk, it's in the book The Talent Code, and I think it's in this book as well, is actually what's going on in the brain when we repeat things. And so we have pathways in the brain where the signals get sent.
The synapses.
Yeah, that one I'm not, yes, maybe it's that, I'm not sure. The one word I am sure about is this thing called myelin, myolin. And these pathways get, as you repeat things and the message gets sent along that pathway, they get coated in myelin and it reinforces that pathway. So it's very hard for that message to deviate or change.
And that's for everything. That's for cognitive behavior. That's for physical muscle memory.
But it's also completely irrelevant to what you want to have embedded in that groove. That's why I'm just saying it's so important that one, you get good guidance, and two, that when you do repeat things, that you're repeating things correctly or the way that you want to, that will get you towards your goals. And so that mindful repetition is so important.
Nick, I love these moments when neuroscience and Lindy Hop cross over.
Oh, yes.
You're such a geek, Nick. I love you. I love you. You're a geek.
Yeah, well, actually, Nick, that quote from
Joe
is actually from a football coach. It's
practice doesn't make perfect practice.
Maybe if you could have a Google, Nick, you can find out. It was, I can't remember the name. It was a famous, I think, a college football coach, or is in the NFL or something. It's a football coach that came up with that.
Right.
And it's sort of become a common saying. Okay, so we had goals. We had structure. We had repetition. And then now what ties in with all that is focus.
Oh, that's a hard one.
It is, especially if it's increasingly difficult.
Yeah, yeah, for all of us.
One thing that
focus
is, there's kind of two aspects. One, I think, is the more obvious, which is distractions.
Yep.
From computers, from phones, from people, from everything. And that, I think, I don't want to go too deep into that, because I think we understand what we should be doing in regards that we should turn off Wi-Fi, we should turn off the phone, we should remove potential distractions so that we can focus. But what I would like to talk about more in terms of focus is actually staying on the one thing. Staying focused on the same material, not hopping around too much, not flitting about and saying, okay, I worked on this for 10 minutes and then maybe the next time we work on it is a month away. No, you want to focus. We're going to take the swing out variation for followers we just put up. Working on that 30 minutes a day for a month with guidance, feedback. Well, whoops, I gave away the fifth pillar. With guidance from a teacher, with good teaching, and with solid repetition of that knowledge.
Right.
That focus tied in with that repetition gets you those results.
Right. I would just say, as a caveat, maybe the first thing that popped into my mind is Lindy Hop is so physical. So, for example, the focus that I would maintain while practicing an aerial would have to be like a condensed amount of time out of fatigue, or you know what I'm saying. There are some things that some things that we train where I have to be honest with myself that my focus and my body's like energy and ability to do this thing well is limited until I get higher stamina or stronger stronger muscles.
Yeah, there's absolutely some physical there's some limitations basically, and often people have time limitations. You have kids, you've got work, you have physical limitations.
Right.
Brass players, they're
with
chops.
their trumpets,
They can't usually practice for more than 3 hours tops in a day. I could be wrong about that, but that's what I've been told.
Yeah.
And so you need to that's why you need to have all this going
Yeah.
for you, because you need to use that time wisely. And yes, you got your playing, but that's your 3 hours of practice. So avoiding shiny object syndrome is a big one for us classical guitarists, and maybe it is for dancers as well, just like the next hot move. Like, yes, however, can you master this basic?
Yeah.
How long have you spent with that?
Yeah. I think as Lindy Hoppers, usually if you have a partner that you're practicing with, there has to be such a clear and strong agreement with each other that we're gonna focus on this and not get sidetracked within each other. And then, of course, if you're solo dancing, not skipping ahead, or I don't know, but it's a delicate balance between fatigue and, okay, I need to let that rest in my body and I'll come back to it.
It is a balance. You're absolutely right. I often talk about the balance of joy in the process.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. The
good.
balance of joy.
Yeah. I mean,
Aww.
as teachers, we're constantly juggling that, because obviously with certain people you could just, and I had a student once, he was a master's student, he went on to do a doctorate, now he's got a university position. He had this Co.
Yeah, I know Co.
There's a particular diligence that he had where we worked on scales for 6 months without touching repertoire at all, because we needed to fix up his technique, and it worked. And there are people who can do that and are happy doing that. For other people, they'll get 2 months in and be like, you know what, I didn't sign up for this, I'm out.
Right.
And it takes all the joy out of the situation. I would say for most people, we need to have the balance of, in terms of music, it's repertoire and pieces mixed in with technique, or social experiences or ensemble.
Right.
And in dance, obviously, it's the fun, the play, the socialization.
Sure, and I can think of a lot of practice sessions that I have had in the past that, I mean, they are fun and we are laughing and it does feel like play, but it's still, when I think about it, well, we should get to the fifth pillar before I kind of say they do still contain all these points. Focus, the fifth pillar.
No, focus is 4. So
yes.
We had goals, structure,
yes.
repetition, focus, and the last one is feedback.
Yes.
Now, as I mentioned this book before, and put it in focus. So I created the curriculum at Classical Guitar Corner, and I built it out of what I'd learned. I did my doctoral studies learning about pedagogy and sight reading and things like that, and I started to get really into education. And so I built out, obviously nothing's new under the sun, as they say, and I built out my curriculum with what I'd learned from that. And I came across this book later to find Anders Ericsson's definition of purposeful and deliberate practice. And it very much aligns with all of this, but the key ingredient there is the feedback and guidance from a master. That is largely the differentiator between deliberate practice, where you've got your goals, you've got your structure, you've got repetition and focus, but no one's guiding you and giving you that feedback.
Right.
And at Classical Guitar Corner and at Syncopated City, that's what is offered as that kind of cherry on the cake, is weekly member workshops and office hours and coaching and all that kind of stuff, where the information's there, the structure's there, the goals are provided, but as you move through it, you can ping the master week after week to get that guidance and keep you on that track.
Right.
So there's no big deviations.
I mean, I would think about it for myself personally in the way that I have to continually go back and seek advice from physical therapists or people who are masters at the body and anatomy, and I seek their guidance and feedback to make sure that I'm doing things correctly and that I won't hurt myself. Similarly, private lessons in our community, that's a really powerful way of having that time and that personal feedback to see how you're doing. And of course, in the state that we're in right now, online interactions where you can submit videos and talk to your teachers is really what we have right now, and it's been very powerful and successful with members in Syncopated City.
Yeah, I often say to people who are interested in studying online in our schools is, if it's a good fit for you,
Mm-hmm.
it's an amazing resource.
Right.
And it's not for everybody.
Because it has all 5 of these pillars.
It does. But it also, same with making a good fit with our teacher and their teaching style
Right.
and culture, approach. It needs to be a good fit. It's not a magical bullet that's perfect for everybody.
Right.
But for those who it does fit, I think it's quite outstanding. So I'm going to ask, so those are the 5 pillars. I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions. And while some questions come in, I do want to just put this little addendum at the end. And it has a little bit to do with the joy, which you like.
I love joy.
So,
I mean, you should seek joy. You should allow joy in. That should always be part of it.
so all of this takes effort.
Yeah.
And what we eventually want is to develop habit. Habit is very, very powerful. But it takes time. There's numbers floated around, but 90 days of doing something, I've heard, become habitual.
Yeah.
And when you're not doing something that's habitual, you're using something called executive function, which is,
Sounds fancy.
well, it's something that you have to, it's kind of feeling like you're forcing yourself to do something. Like when you get up, but you're still tired, you're using a willpower to get up. It's using a certain type of energy. And it's executive function.
So it's like a cognitive choice. Like, I know I have
Exactly.
to go do this, and
Exactly.
so you go and do that thing.
As opposed to habit, where you're not using it, making a choice. You're just doing it. You wake up, you make the coffee.
That's the thing you do, yeah.
So what we're looking for is habit. If you've got a good structure, good guidance, and then you have practice sessions that have structure to them and making that habitual, that is the powerful place to be. Now, context, and I am referencing Peak here, the book. So I'm just it's pretty strongly paraphrasing some of these things. But context is really important. And what I mean by context is, if you want to get fit and go for a run,
Yeah.
that's hard. That's a lot of executive function. Like, I'm going to put my runners on, I'm going to go out, it's going to hurt my legs, I'm going to be hobbling around. But if you join a soccer team, I used to play soccer and I loved it. One of the few sports that musicians can play without breaking fingers.
Yeah.
Except for the goalie.
Protect the hands.
We put the composers and the conductors in goal. We did. Because you're in a team and then people are expecting you, there's accountability,
Yeah.
there's momentum with your colleagues, then you will run with less executive function.
Right. You're running because it's fun and you're
Well, yeah,
playing with your friends.
So it's context.
Yeah.
And so that's what I hope we can provide with Syncopated City, is that context. There's community, there's structure, there's a roadmap, there's goals to be set, there's feedback.
There's regular check-ins, lots of FaceTime with each other.
And that, these days, with online education, is really what we can offer. It's not the information. The information is
Right.
not valuable anymore. The information is everywhere. In fact, it's too much. So curation is something else we can offer as well. But that environment, that context, so that over time you can develop positive habits, is what we can provide at Syncopated City, Classical
Yeah.
Guitar Corner, other places.
You know, in truth, a confession for myself is that when we first created Syncopated City as an online school, I was having a hard time with it because it was not in my habit to go to the screen and to go to the computer, especially not a habit to engage with people for dance. And I have to say that the past 2 months, over 2 months
Yeah.
now, I have really instilled a very strong habit of being with myself and with the dance and with the site. So
Absolutely.
it's kind of been wonderful. And you got to think of positive things right now. Of course I'm upset that I can't actually go to practices with my friends and festivals and work and teach and all of that. But you've got to find ways to still do what you love and be who you are.
Yeah. So, excuse me, I'm talking so much.
Yeah, no, you've done a great job. You've done a great job.
Danielle asked, can you please talk about diminishing returns during practice/focus? There is, would you like to go first?
I'm not
or-
sure what that means.
Okay, so diminishing returns is where you're practicing something for 30 minutes and you make some progress with it. But if you keep practicing it for an hour, for 2 hours, in that second hour, you're really not because you lose energy, you lose
Yeah.
focus, you're diminishing your
Oh,
returns over time.
Yes, I can speak powerfully to that. I mean, for example, aerials, which is just a very tough physical feat to do, or gymnastics of any kind, just with the body. You have to know that there is a short and focused thing that you're going to work on, and then walk away and let it sit and come back to it tomorrow because of fatigue. And I guess that's probably going to be different for everyone and for different crafts. But everybody has to know the line of when you're getting close to pushing. Usually it's pain, that dancers would feel, but it can also be just lack of focus. If you're with your instrument and you just can't, you gotta stop.
Yeah, I think that absolutely there's those, and the same with the physicality of playing a musical instrument. You have those, but also I'm a big believer, and I try and take this in a positive context, that sometimes you feel like you're going backwards, or that you're just not making progress anymore. And to a large degree, I think there's a perception, subjectivity about that may not be accurate.
Right.
So we at Syncopated City and Classical Guitar Corner, that we have progress journals.
Right.
And one of the great virtues of those progress journals is to carry you through those long-term dips, or those times where you feel like you're getting diminishing returns, and go back and look at what you were doing 3 months ago and be like, you know what, I have made progress. And although I can't feel it right now, it's there and I can see it because I've got this juxtaposition, this time lapse.
Yeah.
But the positive spin is that I'm of the opinion, when you start getting frustrated with your own abilities, it's probably because you've jumped up a level in your perception of what you're doing.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of thinking of it, Simon.
Well, we talk about tone a lot in classical guitar, and when people start getting frustrated with their tone, it's because they're hearing their tone.
Their standards have risen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that means
Yeah.
you now have this room to develop. So I see it as a very positive sign with certain types of frustration.
Right.
Not all types.
I
but
can
certain
compare
types.
that to in dance. Let's say that you're working on a really complex rhythmic thing that you're trying to add in while dancing. And the very fact that you are able to even understand and execute it, perhaps in isolation, means that your level of rhythm work and physical timing has gone up. And you can compare that to when you were just first worried about swing outs and just first worried about connecting or getting things in time. Now you're pushing yourself to more intricate stuff. So that's a fun thing to figure out what it is that's frustrating you or what it is that you're finding difficult and comparing it.
Yep. You actually had an interesting question asking, can you talk about coming up with goals in a Lindy Hop specific context? That was the question. Example, I know I want to get better at musicality, but I don't know what I don't know.
Go for it.
This is really
the big thing everybody wants. Yes, no, please.
Oh, well, musicality, yes.
Yeah.
But that's what the guide provides.
Right.
You're absolutely right. You don't know what you don't know. And you can make educated decisions because a lot of us are adults and we've gone through the learning experience in many different guises. However, having a guide and investing your time and energy and resources in that guide, trusting that guide, that's where you get it from.
Tells you all of the things that you need to work on, and doesn't just tell you everything. It tells you get it like in an order, and you get it when you're ready for the right step or the next exercise.
And I said to Evita as a preamble today, I'm going to talk about Syncopated City because Evita and Michael are very humble people, as many of you know, but I'm always astonished when I film them for their lessons because they often do one-hit wonders. It's amazing.
Yeah,
they're so clear about their teaching that they can just go and then they say, okay, what's next? And I'm like, I guess we got it.
Our time is very precious because, when Michael does, when we are in the same place at the same time, it's like, we gotta do this.
But I can say without reservation and without hyperbole that Syncopated City has that. It has that roadmap that if you trust in it, if you put confidence in it, and you have the diligence to follow it in a sequential order, you will have that structure learning what you don't know in the
Right.
in the right order.
And-
In our order.
In an order, just an order, not a
It's
random
not the
like.
order. It's your order.
That's right. It's what Michael and I think would be a healthy progression, and other teachers might advise differently.
Right.
But it's just an order to try out. And I will say something that's made me so happy, because it's been about 5 years now that we've had Syncopated City. I personally have experienced members who have grown. Like, I have seen their change.
Sure.
And that is where I really get excited, because I think, okay. And what really stands out to me is that those people put it in. You know, it's not just signing up and, like, you know, being there. I mean, the members really, like, they've done all the challenges, they've gone through all the lessons, they're there every week in office hours, and it's just, it blows my mind how much they have improved, but also how much they put into it. And it goes back to, I guess, they have the discipline, and they have chosen to make it a habit, and they.
I'm trying to find, there's a nice little quote I underlined at some point with a dog-eared page. Here we go. But two things were striking, this is from, again, this Peak book.
Wow.
But two things were strikingly clear from the study. First, to become an excellent violinist / Lindy Hopper requires several thousand hours of practice. We found no shortcuts and no prodigies who reached an expert level with relatively little practice. I love that. No shortcuts and no prodigies.
Right.
There is a popular concept of talent, and I do believe in physiological attributes that help. You know, long fingers, people who have injuries, people who have arthritis. There's things that give you different strengths and weaknesses, but there is no magical gift that people have. It's hard. It's everything we talked about, and hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. and luckily for Lindy Hop and for swing dancing, a lot of that quote unquote hard work is spent in that beautiful realm of joy and play, because we are learning and practicing and repeating things as we social dance. It's just that the thing that can tip you into the higher level is if rather than only social dancing and just having that be your exercise for the day, if you really want to improve, finding the structure, making the goals, finding the feedback, the teachers, and finding the organized way of dedicating yourself to it so that you do see change and improvement.
Yeah. So we're coming up to the end of the hour.
Let's see. There's a lot of wonder. Thank you, everybody, for writing and for giving comments. It's really great to, and we're going to go back and read through all of the comments, and I'll do my best to respond to and answer people if we didn't get to your comment or if we don't get to your question right now.
Yeah, and these questions are great for the office hours that Michael and Evita have inside Syncopated City. And obviously, Evita will be doing more live sessions. When's the next one?
On Saturday. This Saturday morning at 9 a.m.
Which is her birthday.
It sure is. It sure is. There'll be a quick live session to everybody, kind of like this, for a few minutes, and then for members, we're having a little mini member workshop.
So yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh my
on,
gosh,
and
Simon!
Thank you for everyone for watching, and thank you to the dancers and the guitarists who came in. It was an interesting,
very cool mix of
crew.
people. And am I wrong, ladies and gentlemen, people, everyone watching? Simon really, it's not the reason why I love him, but it is one of the things that I admire the most. Not only the effort, time, discipline, commitment that he has put into his own craft of classical guitar, but equally as a teacher. And everything that he has built with CGC, which is Classical Guitar Corner, and then everything that he has helped me with and helped me to focus on in Syncopated City.
Well, thank you. But but also, I feel the same way in that, when we had our wedding in Texas.
In 2016.
In my speech, I reflected on the fact that every single person in our immediate family, our parents, our siblings, are all educators. And it's something that binds us, and we're very passionate about it. and it gives us great satisfaction to be an advocate for people, to guide people, and to celebrate with people when they achieve things. Like it's a really powerful thing. You're getting emotional.
Yes. It is emotional because teachers right now, teaching is one of the most noble professions, whatever it is you're teaching, because you are serving and helping others, and you care. And I think right now about all of the teachers displaced with schools being shut down, and I think of our parents having to learn new technology to kind of keep surviving to teach, but here we are. We're doing this now, and we're grateful that we're able to. We're grateful that we're able to still be teachers.
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you all. Maybe you can, if you enjoyed it, you can hit the like thing on if you're on YouTube. I don't know if everyone's on YouTube.
Where are you right now?
But you can hit we'll see you all in Syncopated City or in another live stream.
Or on Classical Guitar Corner.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great